Hi, it's Mr. Evans. Welcome to Room 310 Bio. Today's screencast is on organic molecules. Now you may be thinking, they teach chemistry across the hall. What am I doing learning about chemistry and biology class? Well, much of biology is molecules rearranging, molecules being synthesized, or molecules being broken down into simpler substances. If you have a good grasp of chemistry, biology is going to make that much more sense to you, and we'll be going into a lot more detail on this in class. Organic. When most folks hear the term organic, they are picturing produce being sold that has been grown without herbicides or pesticides. Or they might be thinking about milk or meat that has come from cows who have not been given growth hormone or antibiotics to keep them healthy. For our purposes, organic is going to be molecules containing carbon, especially if that carbon is attached to a hydrogen or some of other simple atoms that we see frequently in biology. So how come carbon? Well, if you think back to your very basic chemistry, you know that carbon has two electrons on its innermost valence shell, and then it's got 1, 2, 3, 4 electrons in its outermost shell. So a carbon atom can potentially bond up to 4 times with other atoms. We say this makes carbon very versatile. It's able to form many different types of attachments, and for that reason, carbon seems to be the key atom in much of our organic chemistry. Because of this bonding capability, carbon can form a backbone or a skeleton for many different types of molecules. So for instance, a carbon can form a long chain, and I'm leaving out some of the atoms with which it could bond because each carbon, after all, can bond up to 4 times. Sometimes we'll see even a skeleton with some double bonding involved. And once again, I'm not showing every single bond, but these horizontal lines or vertical lines represent the bonds that can form. Carbon may form a branch structure, something like this, and these shapes will help determine the function that's performed. And in many cases, carbon will even form, and it's difficult for me to draw this, I was never very good at art, ring-shaped structures. And we'll see many ring-shaped structures in biology class. But carbon can basically form many different configurations of atoms. So here is a list of the 4 basic macromolecules in biology which you will need to be familiar with. And macro is sort of the opposite of micro, micro meaning small, macro meaning large. So these are going to be, in at least biological or chemical terms, very large molecules. So here's the 4 we need to know. Carbohydrates. Carbs are going to be our main energy supplier. And there'll be a little shot on each one of these coming up. Lipids. Lipids include fats, they include oils, they include hormones, but primarily we're going to be talking about those in the context of cell membranes. This list is in no particular order. Many people might want to put proteins up at the top. Proteins are a very diverse type of molecule. There's many different types of proteins, and they perform a very wide range of functions. And then kind of where a lot of action is directed these days, nucleic acids, our DNA and RNA, the molecules that are responsible for our heredity. So here's carbohydrates, our first macromolecule. Our key functions that we're looking for here, living things run off of carbohydrates. You can use other molecules for energy, but carbs are our main energy supplier. Much of the energy stored in a living thing is stored as a carbohydrate. And in some cases, carbohydrates function as a structural molecule. At least they do in plants and some fungi. So we want to be looking for ways to recognize carbohydrates. One hint is to look for OSE. OSE is a suffix. And I've made a list of some common carbohydrates down here at the bottom, and you see glucose, sucrose, lactose, cellulose, all ending in O, so you instantly think those are a type of sugar. And we have a couple of unusual ones. People can't always agree on terminology. We have glycogen and starch. Those are also carbohydrates, but they don't follow that OS rule. So glucose, very, very simple um, molecule, C6H12O6. Glucose is what we call a monosaccharide. I'll get my M here. Mono meaning one, glucose is a single sugar. Sucrose, which is commonly referred to as table sugar, many of you put it on your cereal, your parents put it in their coffee. Table sugar is actually sucrose. And sucrose and lactose you might know as milk sugar if you see that LACT, these two guys are disaccharides. And in science, we frequently use di as a prefix to mean two. So sucrose and lactose are made of two monosaccharides linked together. Now, glycogen, starch, and cellulose are all polysaccharides, and poly means many. So these are going to be large molecules made of many monosaccharides, and we'll look in class at how glucose plays a key role in forming the repeating monomer, or the building block for these molecules, and how their shape determines actually what they do. I've got the picture of grass up here because grass contains cellulose, as all plants do, in their cell wall, and in this case it's a structural, not a molecule that provides a lot of energy. Lipids. Lipids are a molecule that is found in many, many different places, and we know them as having a lot of energy. Now I'm looking over here at this food. Greasy fried chicken, greasy French fries. I guess this is some sort of mega meal here with bacon and cheese and a burger and maybe some egg. Donuts that have been fried in oil. We think of those as fattening foods. Well, lipids do include our fats, and they include oils. And once again, the characteristics of the molecule, the structure of it, are what give it its basic characteristics. Lipids are hydrophobic. Hydro reminds you of water, and phobia, a fear of. It's not the molecules are afraid of water, but they certainly don't like to interact with water. If you've ever tried to clean a frying pan that's got grease or oil in it, you know it's much more difficult to clean, and it's because of the hydrophobic nature of the fats. I'm looking at this molecule here. This is a fatty acid. This one says it's saturated because every carbon has a hydrogen attached in every possible location. This unsaturated molecule has a double bond right here, and that causes the molecule to bend just a little bit. But fats have a great deal of energy in them. They have 2 times as much as a carbohydrate does, and it's because every place you see these bonds, there's energy that can potentially be released. So fats tend to have a great deal of energy associated with them. The other place we're going to see them is in cell membranes. And membranes have a very unique sort of structure with something called a phospholipid, a phosphate head, and 2 fatty acid tails. Part of the molecule is hydrophobic. It doesn't like water, and part of it is hydrophilic. It's attracted to water. And we'll see in class how this unique structure allows cell membranes to perform many of the functions that they are capable of. Proteins, here's our diverse group. The one thing I really want you to know here is that the building block of a protein is an amino acid. Amino acid's the monomer. An amino acid is composed of a carbon, a central carbon, that's attached to something called a carboxyl group, which is a carbon double bonded to an oxygen, and to something called a hydroxyl group, an OH. This central carbon is attached to a hydrogen. And here comes the amino part. Here's a nitrogen, and that is attached to 2 hydrogens. And this central carbon can form one more bond. Every amino acid has this structure that you see here, but then we're going to add something called an R group. Now, a quick glance at the periodic table will show you that there is no element R. The R is what we call our side group or variable group, and there are 20 different R groups, so there are therefore 20 different amino acids. They're all the same up here, but the R group will make them different, and it'll cause, as the amino acids come together, it will form a particular 3D shape because of interactions between these R groups, and the shape of the protein will determine its eventual function. So proteins can be structural. They can be the molecules that help give an organism its structure. They can be antibodies, which help keep you from getting ill. They are things that will fight off invaders in your body. They can be hormones. Many lipids are hormones, but some proteins are hormones, and they are chemical messengers within your body. Transport. Hemoglobin is a great example, the protein molecule that carries oxygen around through your bloodstream. And enzymes, molecules that will speed up chemical reactions in your body, and this will be worthy of a great deal of study in our class this year as well. And finally, we get to nucleic acids. Our 2 nucleic acids, and everybody's probably heard of these at some point, are our DNA and our RNA. DNA is famous for its double helix structure. It's the molecule that stores our hereditary information. You might think of it as a blueprint or a computer database of some kind. And then we have RNA, which stands for ribonucleic acid. It's a similar molecule, but a little different. It's only a single strand as opposed to a double. And the nucleotides, the molecules that comprise the a phosphate, a sugar, and a nitrogen base, there is a nucleotide, a uracil, that's a little bit different than one that's found in DNA, but these are all details that we can discuss in class. RNA is responsible more for helping proteins get made. It's involved in protein synthesis. So DNA is the storehouse of information, but RNA acts to actually function to manufacture the proteins in the cell. And it has a few other functions as well that we'll discuss, but for right now, let's realize that it helps with protein synthesis. Last couple things I'll wrap up with are the idea of ATP, which is an energy molecule. Things are eventually broken down, and many molecules try to find their way into as part of ATP during cellular respiration. So our cells basically will run off of ATP. And then there's a few vitamins. These are also organic molecules, and we'll want to be familiar with the structure and especially the functions of some vitamins like vitamin C and vitamin E and vitamin K, which helps with your blood clotting. So I hope this little introduction proved helpful, and we'll be going over some more of this material in class. And until next time, we'll see you in room 310.